In this video, we will show you how to install your front strut assembly. Let's get started. Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Make sure you have the suspension hanging. After that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Let's move along to removing our axle nut. To remove this nut, use a 32mm socket. Use a hammer and punch, come right in the center of that axle, and drive it out of the wheel bearing. We only want to break it free. Next, we can move along to our outer tie rod end nut. To remove this, we'll use a 15mm socket. Start that on just a couple threads. Now we'll continue on with a hammer. We're going to give the knuckle a couple loving bonks right along this area to try to cause some vibration to shake the outer tie rod end free from it. Let's move along to removing the upper sway bar link mounting nut. Now to remove this nut, I'm going to use a 15mm socket. If you were to look along the back side, you'll find an area you can grab onto with some locking pliers. In the center, you can use a 5mm Allen head socket. Now let's move along the front side of the knuckle. You'll find a 15mm jam bolt that goes through the knuckle, past the strut, around to the other side of the knuckle, and it pinches it together onto the strut. Use your 15mm socket to remove that jam bolt. Give it a quick inspection and set it aside. Next, you want to use a pry bar coming down through the lower control arm. We'll gently put a tug on this, and you can see that it flexes away from your front strut. We'll just go ahead and let this hang like this and make our way into the engine compartment. Let's go ahead and pop the hood. Move the emblem out of the way. Insert your key into the keyhole. Turn it counterclockwise first. It'll pop up the hood a little bit, and then turn it clockwise to fully release it. Remove your key. Now that we're under the hood, we have clear access to the top area of our strut towers where you'll find each of your 3 mounting nuts. Once you remove the first one, start it back on there just a couple threads. To remove these, we'll use a 13mm socket. Let's reach inside the wheel well, grab onto that strut, fully remove our top nut, and then remove the strut from the wheel well. There it is, friends. Before we get ready to install our brand new strut, you want to make sure you clean the inside of your knuckle. Just use a wire brush for this. Make sure there's no dirt, debris, or rot. Now we can install our brand new strut assembly. Looking along the bottom side, you can see that you have an ear that protrudes outward. It needs to fit into the slot in the knuckle as we bring this up into position. Let's line up our top studs with the corresponding holes in the strut tower. Start on all 3 of your mounting nuts. Now that I have all 3 of these started, we'll continue inside the wheel well. Now let's slide this up into position. Make sure you get that lined up with its corresponding slot on the back side of the knuckle. Once you have that in position, clean and inspect the threaded and shanked area of your pinch bolt. If it looks like it's damaged, you need to replace it. Aside from that, it's recommended to use some thread locker. Let's get this lined up, started in by hand. Once you have it started by hand, continue on by snugging it and then torque it to 74 foot-pounds. Once you have it torqued to 74 foot-pounds, you need to continue torquing it an additional 90 degrees, which is essentially a quarter turn. Now we can put the upper portion of the sway bar link through the front strut. Continue on with your ABS wire bracket. After that, put on your mounting nut, snug it up, and then torque this nut to 37 foot-pounds. Install your outer tie rod end into the knuckle. Snug up the nut and then torque it to 35 foot-pounds. Once you have that torqued, the next thing you want to do is pay attention to the slot of the nut. Make sure it lines up with the hole in the stud. If it isn't, continue tightening your nut until the very next slot does. Slide your locking cotter pin into position and lock it down. The next thing you need to do is put on the axle nut. This is going to be easiest with the vehicle close to the ground. You'll notice that I used a flat pry bar coming across the lug studs, being extremely careful not to damage them in any way. That's to prevent this from spinning while I try to tighten the axle nut. Now, when you tighten the axle nut, you need to make sure that you do it by hand. You can use a ratchet and your 32mm socket, snug it up, and then we're going to torque it. Okay friends, now we can reinstall our wheel. Once you have it in place, continue on by putting all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts on. Once they're started, bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back on the ground and then torque them to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now with the full weight of the vehicle back on the ground, let's continue on by snugging up each of our mounting nuts up here. Once they're snug, torque them to 18 foot-pounds. Okay friends, I showed you how to install one side of your front struts. Whenever you do struts, you need to make sure you do them as a pair. The process will be the exact same thing for the other side of the vehicle. Once you've done that, take it for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.